Chapter 8. Caden. It was such a bummer to have my dreams come true, only to be dashed by Austin showing up out of nowhere. I could have lived my whole life waiting on Grayle to make up his mind about me, if not for the other man. When Grayle's boyfriend whatever touched my shoulder in the kitchen, out of sight of Grayle, he leaned in and whispered in my ear, "Don't think I don't know what you're up to." I turned on the balls of my feet, meeting his dark brown eyes with my annoyed greens. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said coldly, with the arrogance of youth. "I think I made myself clear. I'm not up to anything, as you call it. The only thing I'm interested in is making Grayle happy. Grayle is mine, and no fly-by-night young asshole is going to step in and ruin it for me," he scoffed, placing a slice of pizza in his mouth, then dropping the slice of pie on the counter in front of me and reaching for a finger sandwich. Then he washed it down with a glass of red wine. "Since you found the need to show that you're not at all sure that you have such a hold on Grayle, then I'll come clean with you. I intend to take Grayle from you. It's as simple as that, so be forewarned and on guard. I will be there when you drop the ball, and I intend to take it to the goal line." Austin looked like a football guy, so I used the metaphor he understood. "I could be wrong. You don't have a chance. You're not in my league or Grayle's. I was the first-round pick, and you will obviously be in the last round. Remember Tom Brady? What round did he get picked up in?" Austin must have understood what I was trying to say, and he narrowed his glance and chewed at the inside of his lip. "You don't know Grayle. He's not the kind of man to stray." "Are you speaking about a dog, or a man?" Austin took another gulp of wine and dropped his goblet on a placemat where it made a dull thump. Then he glared at me. "Why am I wasting my time with you? You haven't a chance. I think it's you who are underestimating my chances. You look like a man, things have always fallen into your lap. You've never competed for anything, I bet, and I can bet you never competed for Grayle either. I've competed all my life, and I will compete for him against you, and may the best man win. Seeing that you've had a head start, you might say that I don't have a chance, but I have something you don't." "And what is that?" Austin questioned, biting his bottom lip, then aiming a stony glare and firing a firm, closed smirk my way. "I have time on my side and youth." Well, I had to say something, because it was clear that Austin had the advantage, if Grayle was as loyal as a dog. Then, that was the kind of man I was looking for. I didn't want someone that didn't know what he wanted, wavered, and fucked around whenever his cock got hard. Easy to get, hard to keep. The kind of man I was sure Austin was. When Austin sauntered back into the movie room and sat down beside Grayle, he placed his palm over Grayle's hand, and Grayle turned to him with a smile I wished he'd kept for me. I knew it was time to leave, especially since I'd seen Hitchcock's Lifeboat a million times and Tallulah Bankhead and the good-looking hunk she fell in love with, because they thought they were going to die. Knowing that people said Tallulah was a lesbian didn't make the kiss between her and John Hodiak any less hot. That was my cue to go home, because I didn't want to see the demonstration that Austin would put on for my eyes, especially since he knew I was standing at an angle where I clearly had a front seat to Grayle's affirmation of his love for Austin. I gave an animated wave that I was leaving for whoever was looking. Grayle turned with this curious glance, and he slanted his head to the side, silently expressing disappointment. I headed for the kitchen to thank the chef for the delicious food. "Why are you doing that?" Grayle questioned, and I jumped to hear his voice. It was a beautiful baritone voice, but he'd surprised me because I didn't hear his footsteps. "I didn't want to take your friendship and not pay back," I responded. "You didn't have to invite me. I had a great time, and I thought I should help out by emptying the garbage before I left." I saw a smile. "You are a guest. I don't want my guests cleaning. Someone is coming in tomorrow to clear things away." In reality, I was searching for something to do so I didn't have to go home. "You were invited because—" I'd been watching Grayle's full lips and hadn't noticed a swift, firm hand on his shoulder and a nose on his neck, and then a kiss on the side of his face. I was wondering what was taking you so long, Austin said, holding Grayle around his waist, glaring over at me before his body went flush against Grayle's. If it were me Grayle had been that close to, I wish. I would feel Grayle's cock pulse, but it wasn't Grayle and me in that fucking embrace. Austin held on to Grayle's buckle on his jeans, leaned in so close to him that they could have been Siamese twins that hadn't been separated. Grayle turned from me to face Austin. Caden had offered to clean up, and I told him it wasn't necessary. That wasn't really true, but Grayle thought he needed to add that, and I wondered why. Maybe I knew. I'd given Austin a reason to be jealous, and I realized too late what I'd disclosed to him earlier wouldn't work in my favor. It would surely work against me. Oh, the impulse of youth, and the stupidity of not thinking things through. On my drive home, Lane called when he'd discovered that I'd left. It was only when the lights came on, and the movie ended, and everyone was discussing the merits and art associated with making that picture, something Lane and Cole lived for. Knowing I was a Hitchcock fan, and he didn't hear from me giving my opinion, he realized that I'd slipped away without saying goodnight. After all, everyone had been paired off, and what the fuck was I to do? Did you see Austin? Lane said, with an unusual amount of interest in his voice. Knowing Lane, it meant nothing. He was so caught up with Scott, the nurse in the family, and having him awake at night, instead of him sleeping all day, I knew he never saw anyone but Scott. Therefore, I forgave my best friend, but I was highly pissed when he made a comment about Austin. I couldn't miss him, I said dryly. Damn, but he's handsome. He and Grayle look as if they were made for each other. I wanted to say, shut the fuck up. They weren't made for each other. It wasn't like they were two bookends, or a light bulb for a lamp, or any of that nonsense saying. Grayle and I would have been together, if it wasn't for Austin inserting his handsome, self-important face into my life, and just at the time when I was open to settling down with the man of my dreams. Grayle had been my first. The first man I'd felt something for. The first man that made me want to make love to me, or me to him. I wondered if he was a top, or a bottom. I'd had men want to suck my cock, and since they wanted it more than I had, I didn't see any reason why I should deny them their pleasure, and myself if just to see if I liked it, and if it would have my cock twitching, and I'd want to be with that man forever, but it didn't with those men. However, it had happened with Grayle. Caden, are you there? I'm here, Lane. I thought they looked ridiculous together. Two tall dudes together, what's the point in that? Where's the contrast? You need a deviation, otherwise what's the point? What's wrong with you, Caden? Get a grip. They're together, and it would be hard to compete with Austin for Grayle. There was that word again, compete. Even my best friend thought I couldn't compete. There wasn't anything between them. Nothing that said they looked good together. And when he walked into the game room, and everyone turned to see this handsome man dressed in a suit coat and jeans, which to me were too tight. Then I heard Lane's partner Scott in the background. I didn't think those jeans were tight at all. His ass was just right. Ow? What did you do that for? I heard the loud slap from my speakers in my car. I thought he hit Scott's arm, and with those muscles, Lane probably injured his hand. What are you complaining about? I hurt my hand. Those rock-hard muscles don't give that easily. You shouldn't look at another man's ass, only mine, Lane barked, apparently putting his foot down and showing who was boss. But baby, you know my skin is delicate. I know, baby. I'm sorry. And it was quiet, except for the sound of jeans unzipping. I didn't want anyone calling me and telling me how my best friend had gotten into an accident, or I'd heard it firsthand. I'm hanging up now, I stated. Why? Lane's voice sounded low and hoarse. I called you, Lane chimed in. I didn't want to be responsible for what could have happened next, and when he returned home discussing me with Scott after they'd fucked, and instead of reaching for a cigarette, Lane would spill my business to him. I didn't know Scott well enough. He appeared to be a good guy, a nurse, and we all could use a nurse in the family. Scott had undoubtedly discussed my life with those doctors during surgery. Everyone knew doctors and nurses had more time on their hands than they pretended, especially in the operating theater, from what I'd seen on the news. It was bad enough Lane had called me from his car, and from the sounds of traffic slurping and moaning, it was as if I was there in the front seat when Lane would eventually give Scott a blowjob while he was driving. I'd hear the orgasm he'd reach, and he'd think nothing of it, because he was a nurse and perhaps thought everyone was as jaded about sex as he was because he'd come into contact with lots of naked bodies. That wasn't my kind of scene, to listen in on this erotic but dangerous behavior. I was sure they thought it was hot, driving while giving head, but I wasn't as daring. My boldness stopped at confronting older men, namely Austin, about my future man Grayle Meadows. I hit the red button to get Lane and Scott out of my headspace, and to be able to look my friend in the eyes.